Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow. So in this episode, last episode, Oliver decided that he was going to try and fill the role of Black Canary, find someone to kind of take up the mantle. And, the entire team has come up with a long list of people. But we have Oliver having his reservations about it. And then, Felicity points it out. It's like, dude, no one's ever going to replace Laurel. No one's ever going to meet those expectations. And it's like, because you're setting your expectations super high and everything. And it's like, these are a lot of good potential people, but they will never be good enough. And it's kind of a situation I love the conversation between Oliver and Diggle being for Oliver, he feels like he's betraying Laurel if he finds someone, replace her. And then Diggle's like, no, you're not replacing her. Laurel will always be Laurel. We're not ever going to replace her because you use a term like replace. It's almost like saying bring someone else in and forget that other person. It's like, oh yeah, forget all about Laurel. It's like, no, we will never forget about Laurel. She was always important to us and she will always be important to us. The fact is we're saying to get someone else to pick up that mantle, to honor the legacy that she built and carry on the name of the Black Canary in her name, so. But Oliver's more dedicated at that point. It's like, okay, let's go through it. And they end up, the lady from the last episode, at first we learned that her name is, Tina. I'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. But Tina, I didn't realize it at that time. I should have. It just didn't click in my head at the time. I was just like, oh man, she's pretty kick-ass. She's a metahuman. She's similar to Black Siren, but apparently better because the way she uses her power, she's actually more skilled at it than even Black Siren. Plus, she got some good hand-to-hand combat. Because apparently, because we ended up seeing a little bit of their past in this episode, where we saw, basically she was an undercover cop in Central City around the time of the particle accelerator exploding, and that's how she became a metahuman. Kind of got the powers that she did. The whole situation, basically she's been full on vigilante, but her whole vigilante situation is out for revenge. Because basically there's this group here in Hub City. Well, it's a group that's basically been moving around. She's been following them. In particular, she's trying to find their boss, Sean. Essentially, he killed her partner, and that basically this is all for revenge. Which I like. Kind of how Oliver ended up getting this information. I love the fact that he's like, okay, he calls up Singh in Central City. He's like, who is this? And Singh's like, who is this? He's like, this is Green Arrow. He's like, okay, how do I know this is really you? This could literally be any nut job with a voice changer, which is kind of like, you gotta give him credit. He's like, so how do I prove it? You see Oliver typing something on his phone. He's like, what is he doing? Just a little cameo. Barry dashes, zoom, zoom, obviously as a flash, and leaves a note saying he's legit. Just just the tiniest thing. Obviously to the point they didn't even need to get Grant Gustin, but still, it's just a little thing. It's like, I love that. That's how you prove how legit you are. Just prove, yeah, okay, this is, just have Barry just run over and do that for him really quick. I really appreciate it. He's like, okay, fine, you're legit. But ended up telling him about Tina. But basically, the whole situation is about revenge. And that's that's the parallels that they're trying to create. Is the fact is that her backstory is very similar to Oliver's. The fact is that she basically lost a lot and she wanted to, set things right by getting revenge because she thought revenge would fill the hole in her heart. Obviously, Oliver's asking her to join the team, but she's like, no, she kind of works better on her own and everything. To the point, there's even that weird thing, we have Renee, apparently he's, super into burgers and everything. He's eating, these burgers that have, 4 or 5 patties, and you just have Oliver sitting there at him, just looking disgusted. It's like, dude, how do you want to eat that? The fact of the matter is, I don't even, even Curtis being I don't even know how you're supposed to eat that. What's up with you eating that? That's disgusting. That's a little too much, dude. I get you love burgers and everything, but that's a little too much. But Renee is kind of he's kind of obviously the most vocal person in the team and being like, dude, why are we even bothering with her? She said no or whatever. It's also it's kind of this guy is a bad guy. Sean's a very bad guy because essentially he's selling drugs to young kids. It's called Slide. Basically, you get them high at a young age and then they kind of get hooked on other stuff as they grow up and stuff like that. And it's he's a bad guy. So it's kind of we should probably stay out Tina's way, kind of let her do her thing. But Oliver isn't about that for multiple reasons. It's like, obviously everyone is interpreting, like, well, in particular, Renee's interpreting it as like, oh man, I never met this Laurel lady, but it's kind of like, so this, is she really kind of worth all this? Like trying to get someone to fill that role for her. She was that great of a person. But, Curtis kind of sees that as something else. And that is something else because it's like he wants to help her out because he wants her to have a chance that, that he doesn't have anymore. At least that's what he was thinking at the time. It's like, the fact is, redemption doesn't come easy for most people. Because he ends up, at one point even revealing himself, like, as Oliver Queen. He's like, the fact is, he kind of brings up his past and everything, and it's like he, like I said, had similar circumstances, came back for revenge, but that didn't change anything. It didn't change his whole circumstances. It's still the person he was back on Lee and you to a certain extent, and he can't change it. Like, at least not at this point, he can't really change that. It's still ingrained in him, all that sadness, all that anger and hate is there still inside of him that he kind of struggles with that every day. But he wants to help. He doesn't want her to go down that path because it's like, because also, he brings it up to a certain extent, but he never really goes all out with it. Like, the fact is, your past will come back to haunt you. He's living that proof right now with Prometheus trying to prove to him that, like, oh, he's beyond redemption. And he's like, he doesn't want Tina to go down that route because it's like, you do this, there'll be no coming back from it. Like, the fact is that, you might end up, what you do today might end up creating adversaries tomorrow. Like, your past will come back to haunt you, essentially. But, because I was actually surprised. Well, for one, we ended up finding out Sean is a metahuman too. He ended up becoming one that day, and essentially his powers are kind of similar to Tina's. And the fact is that they both kind of use sound waves, but his kind of act as like a countermeasure of the sense of like they can basically cancel out Tina's abilities. His powers, actually, when they were first being used, I didn't really think of it as, I was like, his powers kind of remind me of Top, because Top could basically give you vertigo. And I was looking at it, I was like, his powers are kind of very similar to Top. And I guess it's to kind of give you that same feeling almost of vertigo, just kind of keep you off balance and stuff like that. It kind of seemed like it almost had a very similar effect, but obviously it's more sound waves than what she does. What she does is just kind of like something to your brain. I mean, obviously it's similar, but it's like, to me, Top's power seems more magical, just kind of like, yeah, it happens. To him, I guess you could arguably explain it by, science. So like the sound waves are so powerful, it's rattling your brain and kind of disorientates you type of thing. So even though, yes, her powers, her being a metahuman still falls on the category of science fiction, and you get what I mean. But what actually kind of threw me for a loop was a whole situation where she was like Oliver's like, don't do this. The fact is, my chance is up for redemption. There's not yours. I was like, okay, you get your typical point where she puts the gun down. Like, no, bam, bam, bam. She shot him. I was like, I didn't think you'd actually do it. I thought you were going to turn away from that situation. I mean, that's the thing, like, because that's always the thing about those situations. You never 100% know. You think like, okay, the person's just going to turn away, and then they just like, and then at the last second they change their mind and pow, pow, pow. But it seemed like, I don't know, I just legitimately thought like, oh, Oliver got to her, she was going to back down. So, but she didn't. I mean, really quickly, since we're talking about that whole circumstance, let's talk about that whole roof scene, which was pretty sick. The fact is, obviously him, Tina, as well as Renee were just like knocking dudes down. There's a point he kind of shoots one of his grappling lines onto a helicopter, and he's using it. It's dragging him, and he's just using that as a way to kind of be up in the air a little bit. He's knocking people out, shooting people with arrows, and then all of a sudden he lands, pulls out his arrow, and shoots it into the helicopter and turns, and it explodes. Which at the same time, it's like, well, what about the person that was piloting that? It's in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, they got away. They didn't really say it. He got away somehow. He jumped out at the last second or something when he saw Green Arrow kind of swirling around, possibly. I don't know. Before it exploded. I don't know. I mean, Oliver didn't seem too concerned about it. It's kind of, it's like I say, it's still in that situation where it's like, oh, is Oliver straight up killing people again? It's hard to say because it seems like he's taking a step back, but at the same time, it also seems like he's taking a step forward. I mean, obviously he's reluctant to do it because he doesn't want to, but it's just kind of like he brought up earlier, like ever since well, not this particular episode, but earlier in the season, like ever since he killed Dark, he's been killing ever since. So. But what really threw me was when she actually shows up later on and she's like, yeah, like, she's talking to Oliver and everything. He's like, yeah, the fact is that, it's hard, dealing with everything that they've got bottled up inside of them, this feeling that they thought would go away once they got the revenge, and it didn't. And Oliver's like, the thing is, what makes it better is the fact is that he's not alone. He's got a lot of people on his side. And he's like, he looks at her and she's like, you're alone. And like, it's hard to handle something like this alone. But if you have other people by your side, that burden's a lot easier to carry. Because it's something Renee and Curtis kind of talked about in this episode. The fact is that this team is a team of second chances for all of them. I mean, Renee brought up an interesting point earlier in the episode being like, yeah, should we really be working with people that are kind of a little crazy? I mean, it's like, let's not forget the last person that was on our team that was a little crazy, bringing up Evelyn, being the fact that she, did what she did, betraying them and everything. But then Curtis was like, well, then you look at yourself, and he's like, wait, what? What are you saying? He's like, Curtis is like, no, I was just going to say, crazy people, period. You were about to use me as an example. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. But then Renee was kind of like, yeah, you're right. The fact, I mean, and that also shows you the fact is Renee is slowly but surely growing. The fact is he's listening to Oliver, following his lead. The fact is he's being a little more open, a little bit more reasonable when it comes to other people, in particular Curtis and stuff like that. So it kind of, I like that we're slowly but surely kind of getting his relation. Like, obviously the characters are becoming more and more of a closer team. Like I said, that's what I loved about this season, because it's like Team Arrow was broken after everything that went down last season, but now it's like Team Arrow is being built back up, becoming stronger than ever, so that's just kind of interesting to me. But the other thing was finding out that Tina's real name is Dinah, and then Oliver kind of can't help but laugh because of it, because I forgot what the word it was that Rory said, but he was like, there is basically a word that basically means fate, that it's like, oh, you meet someone, they're just as skilled, they end up happening to have powers similar to, Black Siren, or the powers that, Laurel kind of had, Cisco create for her, with the device when it comes to, being the Black Canary. So it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to me. It's just the interesting aspect of it all. Another storyline was it was a little storyline, but I feel like it's going to turn into something bigger. Just the whole Felicity situation, where you have Felicity basically she went by a hacker name back in the day, Ghost Fox Goddess. Basically, they're trying to get information to help Diggle, because basically the NSA did some stuff on the guy his name's Walker, trying to, frame Diggle and everything. They did their own investigation, but he has friends in high places kind of shut it down. So, they're looking into trying to figure it out. And the fact is, you had Felicity hacking into it, kind of bringing up the fact is her old hacking days, which we've kind of, touched on in the past with Arrow. But, this is her talking to Rory about it. And then, she ends up meeting someone called Kojo Sledgehammer, I think it was. And she ends up meeting this person. This person ends up turning out to be a big fan of Felicity's. I mean, she was a fan of Felicity's, because she's like, well, Felicity, you kind of fallen off the radar. It's kind of like, well, you started working, for Palmer Tech, and everything, but then you got fired and everything. So it's kind of like, oh, you went all corporate. You left your hacktivist days behind and you went all corporate. Which, she's like, oh, I went off doing other important things. And she's like, what other important things? Like, if you were doing anything, we would know about it. Which that in itself shows you how good Felicity is, because the fact is, a big time hacking group who knows apparently so much about her doesn't know what she does when she kind of moonlights as, essentially tech support for a group of superheroes. So it's like she does some good, but even they don't know about it. But essentially this group, organization or whatever she works for, basically downloaded a lot of data. It's kind of called Pandora. I think they refer to it as Pandora's box, because it has a lot of information, even something to help out Diggle. Because to her, she's like, back in her day, like, Felicity inspired her to kind of be where she is now, like be who she is now, like a hacker and everything, to help people. And she's like, I hope to kind of re-inspire you. And it seems like that, because that kind of got sparked at the beginning of the episode. The fact is, Felicity was like super happy. She's like, oh man, I'm a hacking and everything. And you have like Oliver being like, that's super illegal. She's like, don't worry about it. Like, if anything comes up, with jail time or anything, you could just pardon me. He's like, I don't have that power. She's like, semantics, essentially. They're like, oh, that doesn't matter right now. Just let me do my thing. She was really enjoyed, because she doesn't really get to do that much in her everyday situation. Obviously, a little hacking here and there, but it's just kind of child's play. Nothing like she has to really kind of get neck deep in. This, like I said, her activist days where she's like, oh, hacking bad people so that they could take, set good people free. Diggle in this, position. So what I find really interesting is the fact is she didn't tell Oliver about it. It's just something she's keeping to herself. Obviously, Rory knows about the whole conversation and everything, but she cut off comms, so he didn't hear the whole conversation. He was nearby, kind of being backup for her, but so I can only, obviously he'll probably ask some questions, but she won't, like, I don't, whether she'll tell Oliver or not, I don't know. But obviously she jacks the flash drive in, obviously and gets the information she needs for Diggle, but there's so much other stuff. It's like all these big time corporations that they plan on taking out, all these bad people that, have a lot of money, just that. It's like, I think she even said at one point, like, they could basically cripple a city if they needed to, like, just because they're that kind of big of a network type of thing. So to me, I'm taking this as a situation where it's like, Felicity's going to try and find her place. Like, she enjoys doing a whole superhero thing, but she probably feels like she could be doing so much more, like a hacktivist kind of going. So maybe she'll end up eventually meeting up with this group, maybe even leaving the team because something's crossing my mind, because obviously we have Curtis being back in more of a tech support situation. Obviously, he's still suiting up as Mr. Terrific, but he's still trying to balance himself out. But obviously, his strengths is tech. So part of me is wondering, is like, oh, could it be a situation where Felicity leaves because of the whole hacktivist thing, and that she decides that, and basically it's Curtis who takes over Overwatch, which I really wouldn't think they would do that anyway, because the whole point is obviously set him up to be Mr. Terrific, and now it's like, he is Mr. Terrific, so why would he kind of go back and that just make him someone else? So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like that story's going to go somewhere, especially because Felicity didn't say anything. That's the most concerning thing. It's like, that was one of your biggest complaints from Oliver last season. The fact is he hid stuff from you. And it's like, you're hiding stuff from him. I mean, granted, to her, it's probably nothing that's really necessarily, it's more so than anything, it deals with her past. But it's stuff that could potentially come back to bite them in the ass. Because it's like, who knows, like, this group that she might be getting associated with ends up finding out about all of them, their real identities and stuff like that, and kind of screwing them over. Because something that came up in this episode that Diggle brought up, because I brought it up last episode because we never really got an answer to it, it's like the whole Lila situation. He's like, yeah, because I want to find out how Prometheus was able to get Lila's voice. That is a very good question, I brought that up last time, but it's like, I didn't ever get an answer. It's like, now we're bringing it up again. So that's, I don't whether that's all connected, I don't know. What if Prometheus is actually working with this group, and maybe they think they're doing a good thing because they're like, oh yeah, Prometheus is trying to take down a bad guy pretending to be a good guy, and now it puts Felicity in a position where she's like, oh man, I thought I was working with good guys, but it turned out they're actually the bad guys trying to take down the good guys. It's like now she's not like she's conflicted, but now she might feel like, oh, I need to stay with this group so I can stay up to date so they don't take down my team type, kind of double agent type of thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. That's kind of where my mind is like going. Like, I know I'm just rambling on. That'd just be kind of like, that'd be kind of interesting if it went that route. Like I said, a lot of these recordings and stuff is just speculation of what things could mean and what direction it could be. I don't like it. Excuse me. If I'm wrong, that's cool. I'm not going to be like mad about it. It'd be kind of cool if I'm right. Like, I do, like, I'm like every other smug person. Just like, yeah, I was right. Have like the smuggiest smug face. Just being like, yeah, I was right. I'm so good. I was able to predict this happening. It's like, no. Obviously, a lot of people could probably take a lot of information that's gathered and really analyze it. Like, oh, this means this, and this, especially if you have comic book knowledge, because there's a lot of stuff that's probably read in between the lines that I really didn't get. I mean, there's certain things, like obviously like the whole Dinah situation. Like in the comic books, I do know that like Black Canary's real name is Dinah. Obviously that's Laurel's middle name, but it was never really referenced much. But now it's just kind of like you got Dinah, but Dinah Lance was the real Black Canary. That whole situation. Comic books and TV shows, they're adaptations of them. Aha! Just ignore me and my stupidity. Anyway. The other note I wanted to focus on in this episode is Talia and Oliver. It seems like Talia has had her eyes on Oliver for a while. Basically, she's like, the reason why she saved him is because she knows everything that Oliver's done. That basically everything, from being on Lian Yu all the way to why he's working with the Brock for going after Constantine for a promise and stuff like that. And she's basically like, she's taking an interest in because it's like, you could do so much good with what you do. You have the skills and everything. That essentially she kind of brings up the fact is the reason also why she took an interest in him is because the hood that Oliver took, obviously that he got on Lian Yu, is from one of her students, which Oliver brings up the fact is like, how can you be his student? You're like half his age. And obviously, Lazarus Pit and everything. Obviously they haven't brought it up, and she in particular hasn't brought it up, but it seems like she was more so than anything trying to recruit him to be part of the League of Assassins. Essentially being like, the fact is that you could do so much good. She kind of gives him a test that basically to take out one of Constantine's like suppliers, the person that kind of helps with his revenue. She helped him a little bit by taking down one or two guys, but then Oliver, like, she kind of stepped back. I was like, oh, well, what happened to the fact is that taking care of everyone else and leaving the main guy just for Oliver? But it's like, nope. Like, she took down one or two guys. Oliver took down the rest of them, knocking them down, shooting. Had a single pistol. Maybe at some point he might have like dropped his gun and picked someone else's gun up, but never at any point in time he only had one gun. Literally dropping bodies like crazy, and it's like, dude, that is sick, disturbing yet sick. And then when it came to the main guy, Oliver got in a car with him and bashed his brains in with like the underside of the gun. And when he walked out the car, his face was covered in blood. And it's like, yo, that's the Oliver that we know going forward, like who he was back in season 1, just killing people without hesitation. Kind of like I said, the reason why he's in the situation he's in now. But essentially the whole thing was a test by Talia because she wanted to show him, to remind him of the monster that's inside of him. He's like, she's like, I know that you think you're a monster. It's like, I don't think I'm a monster. I know I'm one. Because he's always kind of reserved himself because everything that's happened to him, all the experiences have basically made him into who he is now. And basically he doesn't want to kind of, like, that's the main reason why he hasn't gone back home. Because she's like, this book, the fact is there's a long list of evil people that your dad is giving you the answers for, but you've been reluctant to go home. It's because to him, he's like, he doesn't want to go back home because he feels like he can't go back home because he's this monster and he doesn't want his family and the people he cares about to see him like that. But for Talia, it's kind of like, she's kind of a situation where she's kind of like, the fact is, yes, there's a monster inside of you. But the fact is, that monster could be used for some good. That basically, if you want, with this whole situation, if you want to kind of control the monster a little bit, you're going to have to give it its own identity to become something else. She's the one that basically got him to like create the separation of his mind of being Oliver Queen and being able to keep his, give the monster its own form, and that being the hood/vigilante. So she's the one that kind of inspired him for that, and it seems like she's probably going to be sticking around, obviously, to train him and everything like that. Like I said, like, we don't really know what Talia's circumstances are, because I don't remember if it was brought up or not. I could be wrong, but I think she's, obviously, present day timeline, she's dead, I think. Because, like, obviously, like, previous to this, the last time the only other time we saw Talia is when she was a little girl on Legends of Tomorrow, back when Sarah went into the past and joined the League of Assassins back then. It makes you, like, kind of thinking about it, it makes you wonder, did that influence this whole situation? Like, maybe meeting Sarah and everything eventually is the reason why Ra's al Ghul eventually took an interest in all. Well, circumstances led to that was mainly Malcolm's doing it, kind of led all that to happen and make him even take an interest in Oliver. But the fact is that Talia knew him and everything means that he was probably always a person of interest, but then he just ended up finding his way to him, like I said, once again, thanks to Malcolm's machinations and stuff like that. It's definitely going to be interesting to see that going forward. Not only just seeing, like, because that was always something that, people were just like, oh, we haven't really seen Oliver take that step forward to become the bad person that he was not bad, but like the straight up killer he was at the beginning of the series, because it's like, obviously the flashbacks and who he is now it's the present is supposed to be mirror, like opposites of each other. It's like, obviously he's struggling with it, but it's supposed to be like, oh, him as Green Arrow is supposed to be going down the more just and righteous path, and then you have the, him 5 years ago slowly becoming, quote unquote, a monster. But it's like, even here in the present day as Green Arrow, he's still struggling with that monster, and it's like having to look at himself in a mirror, essentially having to face off with his reflection. Is kind of what, essentially, that's kind of what Prometheus is. Kind of like Prometheus is a gigantic mirror making Oliver see himself for what he really is. So overall, just a very good episode. Very interested to see how everything plays out next time. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.